We the people, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and ensure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity, do ordain and establish this Constitution of the United States of America. I learned that in third grade. It was a song. That's what we learned in the country I was born in the one I grew up in. I want to speak this morning about another one. There is some who believe that when Jesus came teaching, he came to form another nation. Called it a kingdom, but it was a nation. Matthew uses the term kingdom of God, kingdom of heaven, 36 times, more than any other gospel. Only 14, for instance, in Mark, and only 2 in John. But 36 times in the Gospel of Matthew. And so you start hearing the word without even noticing it after a while. But let me remind you what you already know. Matthew says after he was born, there was wise men who came and said, "Where is he that is born King of the Jews?" There it is. Jesus said multiple times, the kingdom of heaven is like, it's a mustard seed, it's yeast, it's a treasure hidden in a field, it's a net that's cast out into the lake, catching all sorts of fish. When Jesus was coming into Jerusalem on Palm Sunday, the crowd shouted, "Behold your king riding on a donkey." He stood before Pilate, and Pilate said, "So you are a king then?" Jesus said, literally translated, "Those are your words." They formed thorns into a crown and put it on his head and said, "Hail, King of the Jews," also in Matthew. There was a sign over his head that said, "This is Jesus, King of the Jews," also in Matthew. And they taunted him, saying, "So if he's a king, let him come down from the cross," also in Matthew. So you start to get the idea, some say, that the way Matthew tells the story, Jesus was not coming into the world just to save sinners. He was coming to found another nation without borders. And he was founding it inside the very nation you were born in and grew up in. Coming as it does at the front end of Matthew, the Sermon on the Mount is something like a constitution. And coming as they do at the front end of that Constitution, the Beatitudes are something like a preamble. We the people. Jesus is describing the kinds of people that are heroes in this nation he is founding. As Emily said last week, it's nothing like the nation you grew up in. The heroes are the poor, the persecuted, the hungry, the pure, the meek, and the merciful. Jesus would say, these are the people who get to board the plane early. These are the ones who get thanked for their service. They hang pictures of the poor, the meek, the merciful, and the persecuted. They hang pictures of those things, those people in the rotunda of another capital. They make busts out of them. And the schools and the banks take the day off on their birthdays. You hear it? Jesus is speaking into existence another kind of kingdom. There is such a thing as power and wisdom and fame. There is strength, there is security, there is freedom, there are winners and there are losers. But these things don't mean anything like they meant in the kingdom you grew up in. They all have different meanings. In the nation that you were born of the Spirit into, the one that Jesus is forming, to go up, you must climb down. And if you refuse to climb down, you were already down, but when you start going down, you're actually stepping up. We have different ladders. In this nation, to be secure, you have to put yourself in jeopardy. For the ones who find their lives are the ones who lose it, and the ones who try to save their lives are the ones who forfeit their lives. In this kingdom, you are strongest when you are weakest, and you are weakest when you flex your muscle. When you're poor, you have the power to make others rich, but when you become rich, you lose your ability to enrich others. So you have most when you've given most away, and you have least when you possess most. You are highest when you are lowest, and you are most sinless when you are most conscious of your sin. You know that you've been redeemed from all sin, and yet there are times when you feel like the worst of sinners. You are wisest when you admit your ignorance, most influential when you lift others up. Sometimes you do the most by doing nothing. You go the furthest by standing still. You grow by subtraction, by letting go of things, not by adding things. You fear God, but you are not afraid of him. When you are in his presence, you feel unworthy and undone, and yet there is no place you'd rather be than in his presence, unworthy and undone. You know that you are nothing, and yet you know that you are the child of God. Does all of that make sense? What Emily said last week is that, well, I was with my grandkids, so nobody taught you the American values, just like nobody teaches a child to speak. They learn to speak by watching you speak. And that is exactly what you did, and so did I. You came up in the nation you were born into, and you just watched what gets rewarded. Who are the heroes? How do things get done? And very subtly, unknowing to you, you learned your version of the same values. Now Jesus comes walking into your world and turns everything upside down. Or as she said, right side up. But it never feels right side up to you because you feel like you're still left in this nation that already has a leader. They've already got definitions And every time you pursue the ones you say you believe in, it feels like you're losing ground. So the purpose of the Beatitudes is simply to remind the faithful that you are not. You don't have to strive to become these things. You just have to trust. These are not virtues, as you heard last week, that you practice in order to get into heaven. These are things you become once heaven has gotten into you. You get them not by reaching up. You get them by letting go. These are not virtues you become after you've grown up. These are virtues you used to be before you grew up. If you lost them, you lost them in your adolescence. Because the other nation was already upon you. So the Beatitudes simply say, remember where you came from. I thought about that this week. When you came into this world, you didn't come walking. Somebody carried you. Then they nursed you. Then they covered you. You were somebody else's responsibility, weren't you? I spend some of my days now in nursing homes. And in nursing homes, they carry you. They feed you. They cover you. And you are someone else's responsibility. Somewhere between the coming and the going, we've learned another way. That leads us right into the first beatitude, the poor in spirit. Can I say right up front, church, that to be poor in spirit does not mean you have low self-esteem. Low self-esteem is still an absorption with oneself. In some cases, it's self-importance turned upside down. It's someone thinking too highly of themselves whom life has disappointed, and they've flipped it. Now they have low self-esteem. Nor is poor in spirit a number 2 on the Enneagram. It's not that you're a pleaser of all people, only happy when others are happy. You must have been born poor in spirit. This is not a meek and timid, quiet spirit. There must be a way to be poor in spirit and cleanse the temple. And there must be a way to be poor in spirit and tell religious people they're sons of hell. Because Jesus actually did both of those, I presume, without losing his poor in spirit. Are we okay? Can we just get that out there? It turns out the word has a history. In the Old Testament, Isaiah uses it multiple times. He says, the poor and needy cry out for water, and there is none. So there it means someone who is desperate, helpless, and thirsty. In Isaiah 55, Yahweh says, I live in a high and holy place, but also with those who are humble and contrite in spirit. And he says it to an audience full of self-importance. So poor in spirit doesn't mean running yourself down. It just means knowing your place. And you can do that by giving to things and to people the importance they have in reality. Not in this nation. And the poor in spirit takes care of itself. Maybe the best way is to see pictures of it. So there's a centurion in Matthew chapter 8. The guy has power. He has followers, and he says to Jesus, just speak the word. I don't deserve to have you come under my roof. Just speak the word, and my servant will be healed. So here, poor in spirit means forgetting one's status, forgetting our followers, focusing on our need, recognizing our place when we are standing in a room with Jesus. The Canaanite woman in Matthew chapter 15 asks for a miracle. Jesus says, it is not right to take bread from the children's table and give it to the dogs. Well, this sounds an awful lot like a racial slur. And you know what every American would say in a moment like that. She says, yes, but even the dogs eat the crumbs that fall from the children's table. Jesus goes, what? I haven't seen this kind of faith in Israel. So there, poor in spirit means holding one's place when God doesn't give you what you want. Poor in spirit means not feeling entitled to anything. There is a woman who sneaks into a crowd. She reaches out and says to herself, if I can just touch the hem of his garment, maybe. She manages to go where she should not go, and when she touches it, she is changed. And rather than jump up and give a testimony, she actually recuses herself and tries to hide back in the crowd. Jesus turns and says, who touched me? And finally, when she can hide no longer, she says, it was me. Poor in spirit there means recognizing your bare need and knowing only Jesus can satisfy that. Then there's this parable in Luke 18 of two guys that go into a temple. What person goes into a temple when they feel like a sinner? Who follows a religion that doesn't make them feel good? This is exactly what he does. While one of them approaches the altar and starts giving his resume, I thank you that I am not like other people. Is there a better definition of ego? I thank you that I am peculiar. I am not like others, when in fact, he is just like others, because all others feel they're not like others. He's actually proving he is what he says he isn't, and then using his own disciplines, all of them good, by the way. He has pushed religion to the outside of his life. And his posture is still proud. Meanwhile, there is a sinner, a tax collector, who the word says stands at a distance, only bows his head and says, God be merciful to me, a sinner. So here, poor in spirit is recognizing one's sin. And not just recognizing, lots of people recognize their sin. It's asking for mercy when you have sinned. The poor in spirit want to be rid of their sins. They don't justify them or minimize them, or they certainly don't shout out the sins of other people. To be poor in spirit is to stand next to someone who is proud and never see that person's pride. To see only your own. William Loss said, most of us consider ourselves humble only because we know how much we hate pride. He said, but the fact is, the pride we hate is almost always in other people. We have rarely seen it in ourselves. Says William Law, one should not consider themselves humble, except when they see pride only in themselves and almost never in somebody else. Wow. The poor in spirit censure themselves. So Jesus says, here it is. Blessed, happy, the best word might be congratulations to the unpretentious. Because they don't have to put on. They've given up long ago impressing people. They are free to just be who they are, not try to keep up with who they think other people want them to be. Congratulations. And congratulations to the unworthy, to the least likely to succeed. You have nothing to protect. You've lost it all. You have only God. And congratulations to the powerless, because you can't make anything happen, and so you don't have to make anything happen. And congratulations to those who have been pushed to the margins of the American society, because that's where the kingdom of God always is. By nature, we crave things opposite. Poor in spirit. And by its nature, heaven hides in places we avoid. Last story, I'll tell it for a reason. I told it 19 years ago. I looked it up. It's a story of 2 football games back in early 2000s. The first was 2006. I was sitting up in the living room on a Monday night. I was watching Baltimore Ravens. They were playing. I don't know who they were playing. And I don't know why, but Ray Lewis, he's normally a linebacker. He's playing special teams that night. And this guy, he's going to run a kickoff return back. And he gets about to the 25, 30-yard line. And Ray Lewis, who is built like a cement truck, just bam, hit him dead center, dropped him right there. Ball's just laying on the dude. He's not hurt, but man, the fillings in his teeth are ringing. And I'm looking at this at about 11:30 at night, and I'm watching this, and I just screamed. I just went, holy cow! He knocked his head off. I don't know how you feel about that, but I was pretty excited. And all of a sudden, I heard the floor over my head. It started to creak. And I went, oh, shoot. All of a sudden, within a minute, my wife, Lori, is leaning around the corner, looking into the living room, and she just said, do you mind? I said, I'm sorry. I didn't even think about it. She said, you need to get to bed. I said, all right, just wait a minute. Hon, before you go, if you'll wait just a minute, they're going to show this replay. And I said, you will see the most amazing hit you have ever seen. She said, if you don't keep it down, there's going to be another amazing hit. And you're going to be part of it. I love the story because it's a picture, it's a metaphor of the nation I grew up in. Power in the country I was born into is lining up and enforcing your will on somebody else's will. Power is either taking property or defending it. Power conquers. A couple weeks after that night, I read an article in Sports Illustrated, Rick Riley, and he talked about another football game in McDermott, Ohio. It involved a player named Jake Porter. He's 17 years old. Jake cannot read, cannot write. He can scribble. And sometimes he gets the letters in his name backwards. He has what is called chromosomal X syndrome, which means he has a severe case of a mental handicap. So he can't do what other 17-year-old kids do, but he loves to play. He loves to play football. He loves to run track. He loves to play baseball. And he never gets to get on the field. He is there every day for practice, but has never once touched the ball, never made a tackle, never been on the field. So it was strange that night when Dave France, the head coach of Northwest High in McDermott, Ohio, 5 seconds left, decides to put Jake Porter in the game. Before he made that decision, France went to the center of the field, 50-yard line. He called the defensive head coach over, and the two of them started talking. All the audience saw that night was hands were flailing, the coaches were arguing, the referee stepped into the middle of the argument and separated them, and then they went to the sideline. Porter came on to the field, and when they handed him the ball, you can see the video, he took a couple steps toward the line of scrimmage, and then he started to genuflect, and then he stopped, and then in almost a state of panic, he turned around and he started running back to the quarterback in the other direction. The quarterback said, no, turn around and run that way. Porter then turns around and very cautiously starts to run toward the line of scrimmage, and in the words of Rick Riley, he said when he hit the line of scrimmage, the defensemen parted like peasants for a king. And this 17-year-old kid ran straight through the middle of that defense, straight into the end zone. And when he got there, he started celebrating. He turned around and handed the football to the official, and he ran out of the end zone with his hands up. And Riley says, the mothers in the audience were in tears. The fathers were shouting. Players on both sides had taken off their helmets and they held them in the sky. 21 other players, offense and defense, are celebrating the only play that kid touched. I told this story, and I said almost 20 years ago when I was done, a student from IWU came to me and said, Steve, I was there. I was at the game. Everything you said was true, except the score. The score was not 42-0. It was actually 49-0. I said, oh man, it's worse. I said, what happened in midfield? She said, all reports were when Dave Frantz, Jake Porter's head coach, called that meeting at the 50-yard line, he said to the other coach, okay, here's the play I told you about. We're going to give the ball to Porter, and Porter's just going to take a knee. After he takes the knee, the 5 seconds are going to run off. He's had his play, and the game is over. And the head coach from the other team started protesting vehemently. He started saying, that kid is not just going to take a knee. That kid is going to score. I want that kid to score. Then he went back to the defenseman on the other side, pulled his defensive team into himself, got right up in their grill, and said, listen to me. That kid's going to get the ball, and when he gets the ball, I want none of you to touch that kid. You make sure he scores. When it was over, Jake went up and down through the halls of the high school, telling everyone that he won the game. He has no idea. He knew nothing about the conversation. One of the head coaches said, something has changed in the culture of our schools since that game. Social media lit up only negatively. Some of them said, keep stuff like this in the Special Olympics. Someone else said, you don't purge your high school football by fixing the score. This is football we're talking about. But people in both schools knew this was much bigger than football. As one of the coaches said, I've got this player. He's a standalone, tough guy kind of player. Never has time for anyone else. He said last week, I saw that kid helping 2 students from special education. His words, I about fell over. Turns out, there is a power in the powerless. Blessed are the powerless, for in their weakness, they call the strength of heaven to come to their defense. Now, I tell that story because whether you know it or not, you are that kid. It's hard for some of us to believe because the more talented you are and the more accomplishments you have and the harder you work, the easier it is to think it was mostly you. But the fact of the matter is, if you succeeded in life, it is because 2 superpowers met in the center and they had a conversation that you know nothing about. And the conversation went something like this. That person is a child of mine. And when he hits that line, I want not one of you to touch him. I want them to score. And you may dance in the end zone and think you won the game, but those superpowers know better. How many times did God give you something too big for you? You took 2 steps, panicked, and turned around only to have someone say, no. You must run. Blessed are the poor in spirit. This morning, the way to close is to leave to you to do what you feel best doing, I think. Some of you, you're going to leave, and others of you, maybe you'll come forward near the altar. Others of you might stay at a distance. But you'll sit in quiet for a moment, and you'll say something like, God, be merciful. Hear the words of Paul. Do nothing out of selfish ambition. Rather, in humility, value others above yourselves. Don't look at your own interests, but each of you look at the interests of others. And in your relationships with one another, you should have the mindset of Jesus, who, even though he was the very nature of God, did not consider equality with God as something to be grasped. He made himself nothing and took upon himself the form of a servant and became obedient, even to death, even death on a cross. Therefore, God has highly exalted him, gave him a name that's bigger than any other name, so that wherever his name is uttered, every knee, it'll either buckle or it'll bow. And every mouth will say that Jesus is King, to the glory of the Father. Jesus, listen, please, to the poor in spirit.